I'm grateful that the Super Mario Bros. Z reboot exists. If you're a newer fan of the series, I want to take you back in time for a minute. I've been watching Super Mario Bros. Z since I was a little kid. It would be an understatement to say I was anything short of obsessed with it. I would watch those fight scenes over and over again, and I know I'm not the only one. Some people recently made a whole ass remake of the Yoshi's Island episode. It should go without saying the passionate community this series has, which is why this next part came as a bit of a shock to a lot of us. In 2009, the creator announced he was going to take a potentially permanent break from the series. It had become just too much to handle on top of all the other stress in his life. And as a content creator, that's something I really relate to. It was hard to say goodbye to a good thing in this way, but it was understandable. And at the end of the day, it existed, and we got to experience it at all. I think a lot of people, including myself, were grateful for that alone. So now imagine our surprise when in 2015, we got this, a reboot episode. A true, high-quality recreation of Super Mario Bros. Z by the original creator. The excitement was unreal. Getting to see this series again, with this level of quality, was amazing. I don't know if I have words to describe how much I love this. Actually, yes I do. Dear God, it's beautiful! Oh, I don't have words. You people know what I'm all about. Let's fucking do this. Sequence 1. Arrival of Danger. We open on this Goomba coming across a strange gem in the fields until this mysterious robot appears. This scene basically plays out the same way the original series did, but with some noticeable improvements. The staging, directing, sound design, character work, lighting, and of course the animation. Let's start with the staging. When this Goomba walks through the fields, there are bushes he goes behind in the foreground, and when this mysterious robot shows up later on, the camera spins around him. It gives the environment a greater feeling of 3D space, and it only gets better from here. Also, I know the robot's name is Metallics, but the story hasn't given us that information yet, so I'm just playing along. The original show was great in the way that it broke 3D camera movements, but it still felt like the show was taking place in a three-dimensional straight line. So this sense of space is a significant improvement over the original series. Let's move on to the directing. When this Goomba picks up the Chaos Emerald, you can see the camera zoom in on it a little bit. It's small, but it adds a little more energy to what was once a very static shot in the original series. The camera starting off on a wide establishing shot, then zooming in closer, also establishes a sense of comfort for the Goomba, as he starts to ignore his environment and focus in on his own desires. Then, when this robot shows up, the camera is forced back into wide shots, showing how the world is overwhelming the Goomba. Look at how this robot controls the scene, the camera spinning around him giving him this all-encompassing feeling. Then, as he starts to charge, the camera zooms in on him until he blasts it away. It gives his introduction a feeling of overwhelming control, as it almost feels like the camera is being dragged by him. Suddenly, the Goomba's sense of comfort and personal space is being invaded by this robot. It's these little improvements in the directing that make this scene so much more dramatic. For the sound design, there isn't too much I want to talk about in this scene, but people frequently ask me why I didn't address the music in my previous video. The simple answer is I wanted to focus on the elements the creator himself was responsible for, but I will take this time to address the theme song. I was not a fan of the original song, although that mostly comes down to preference, but Mario Minor by Power Glove was the perfect choice for an opening. It's high energy and exciting while utilizing Mario game sound effects. It feels like a Mario anime opening. Let's move on to the character work. Obviously, this robot is the star of the show. The opening of this series is all about creating a foreboding sense of danger and making the audience ask questions about what's going on. We establish a lot in just a couple seconds. We know this robot has an objective, that he's powerful, and most importantly, merciless. He kills this Goomba when he could have just picked up the emerald. What was the Goomba gonna do, tug of war you for it with his hands? The last thing I want to touch on in this scene is the animation. The sprite work in this is a lot more lively than before. A part of that has to do with the more expressive character sprites. I love the new custom sprite for this robot. Giving him eyes allows for a much greater range of expression than before. We're even getting drawn character profiles to make dramatic moments like this one really hit. But there are also little things you probably didn't notice as much. Look at the way the bushes are violently swayed by the force of the wind, the powerful dust cloud it erupts, the sparks of lightning that leak out, the way the perspective of the ground changes as we pan down, and even just this clever background loop. There were so many little things I didn't notice until I started my review. The last thing I want to touch on is the dialogue. I know the dialogue in the original series was never perfect, but there is one line that was carried over from the original I regret never pointing out. It's when this Goomba says, "Is there a storm brewing?" It adds a kind of symbolic weight to this robot's introduction, because yeah, a storm is brewing. Because we know, when that robot shows up again, shit's gonna go down, and shit's gonna go down hard. If I do the yay, it's fun again joke, is that still gonna be funny? Sequence 2. To keep my analysis as structured as possible, we're going to divide each sequence into these sections: the staging, directing, sound design, character work, and animation. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this reboot's feeling of 3D space. Let's go over how it accomplishes this. 1. Creating clear landmarks. Right out the gate, we are given an establishing shot that shows everything's relationship in space. We know that Peach's castle is right here, and that the Mario and Wario Bros are on the right and left side surrounded by bleachers. So, when Wario charges directly at Mario and gets tripped, what do we see behind them? Peach's castle. You might not think this is important to bring up, but it really is. Having these landmarks be consistent in the background subconsciously allows you to understand where these characters are in space. Next is the perspective. In the original show, the characters were all squeezed together in a flat perspective, but the reboot has characters farther and closer to the camera, showing that they aren't just squeezed together in a straight line. There is a lot of variety in the camera angles. We aren't just looking from the side, but in front, behind, close up, and far away. Yes, the original show had this at times too, but more variety in the angles and clear landmarks is what makes the reboot better in this regard. Another thing is depth of field. Once again, something the original show did, but I never called attention to. You might not notice it, but the background is actually blurred out during the fight. It not only makes the fight animation more clear, but it feels like the subjects are farther and closer in space. There is a clear background, middle ground, and foreground. Next up is the directing. The action in this show was always great, but I love how much better this series is at moving the camera. Look at how it tracks the characters during the action, the way it pans over or slowly zooms in on something. We're gonna skip the sound design for now so that I can discuss it in the last sequence. Next up is the character work. We pan down to an establishing shot of our main characters, Mario and Luigi, and their rivals, Wario and Luigi's purple alternate skin for Smash Bros. But we also get an introduction to another new character, Rockhawk. I appreciate that the series is trying to foreshadow antagonists earlier on. I never had a problem with antagonists just showing up, but I understand the desire to highlight them earlier on. It shows that there are going to be a lot of competing parties with their own interests and grudges. It also allows us to naturally transition into conflict with them while characterizing them earlier on. Rockhawk puts up a proud confidence when in reality he's probably more bark than he is bite. We understand that he's someone who values glory, so when certain MacGuffin emeralds show up later on with the promise of power, we easily understand his objective and motivations. Also, I love the little detail of the cloud barely being able to hold him.
Get the f*** off me!
This time, we have a Smash tournament instead of a race. It still provides the same function of giving us a normal world with lower stakes conflict, but this time it's way more exciting and visually engaging. Wario charges at Mario, but it's made pretty clear he doesn't stand a chance on his own. I love how Wario's moveset is highlighted in this fight. He has his own distinct style of tackling, biting, and farting. We see his aggressive side, his ego, and overall underhanded nature. The Wario Bros have always been a great contrast to the Mario Bros. The Mario Bros support and love each other, but Wario is a total ass to Waluigi. It also highlights earlier on the importance of Luigi and Mario's teamwork. As I said in my old analysis, Mario needs Luigi as much as Luigi needs him. Mario never wins on his own. Having Luigi save Mario just as he was about to lose helps us to understand how important it is for them to work together. Now it's time for the lighting. There isn't too much I want to say about it, but there are some noticeable shots. The first is this shot of Wario flying into the sky and turning into a silhouette. This makes sense because the sunlight overhead is causing his shadow to become more intense. Another thing is the way the series plays with the lighting during the fire attacks. This isn't how light actually behaves, but darkening the environment highlights the intense heat of the flames. Even look at the shadows behind the characters. It's not always about what's realistic, but what's dramatic. Last but certainly not least is the animation. The fight itself is certainly impressive. I pointed out in my previous video the animation of individual limbs, and you can see that here with limbs even being squashed and stretched to give interesting effects. It makes the character animation so much more lively and flexible. Squash and stretch is even being used as characters change from pose to pose to make it less stiff. But there are also tons of other little animations, like the crowd of toads being animated, the small gag with Waluigi, the clouds moving in the background. It gives the reboot a much more polished feel. As Mario and Wario's teams charge each other, a bomb appears destroying the arena. When the dust settles, Bowser appears in this awesome silhouette shot and the episode ends on the anticipation of conflict. Except it doesn't! Sequence 3.
Not.
The reboot covers both episodes 1 and 2 of the original series. This works way better in terms of the pacing, since the original 2 episodes both function as the introduction to the main characters. For this sequence, we'll skip the lighting since I've already said everything that I needed to. Let's get into the staging. The first thing I have to bring up is how all the battle damage is visible throughout the fight. It gives every attack a real sense of impact and delivers on the intensity of the fight. The placement of the battle damage even comes into play later on. You can see this rock here at the left side of the stage. Later, when Bowser is metal and on that side of the arena, he throws that exact rock at Mario. This dedication to having consistent battle damage in the fight is unreal. I can only imagine how difficult it was. Next is directing. Mario vs. Wario is a good fight, but the sheer intensity of Mario vs. Bowser is insane. Mario and Wario's fight felt pretty restrained even if it had a big climax, but having Bowser destroy the arena sets the tone for this confrontation. It's Bowser's way of showing that no arena will be able to hold their confrontation. Characters get sent flying, use massive fire blasts, and run all over the arena. Wario's fight being restrained makes this fight better by contrast. Bowser's entry is incredible. Just look at how his footsteps shake the screen and how he towers over Mario. The way the camera shakes, zooms, and follows the action gives so much dramatic energy to this encounter. The sound design is also fantastic. There's so much weight in Bowser's footsteps, and every little action is punctuated with some kind of sound effect. Being able to hear everything in the show is important to creating a feeling of immersion. The smallest sounds give real weight and texture to everything we see. The clanking sounds of this robot, the massive weight of Bowser's steps. It gives auditory identities which establishes something about their presence. How unfeeling this robot is, how grotesque Wario is, or Luigi's cowardly shivers. Let's move on to the animation. Damn, this fight goes hard. This became my new favorite fight in the series, and it would still be number 1 if episode 2 hadn't come out recently. There's a clear change in the way that the series approaches fight animation. In the original series, a lot of fights took place in midair. While it was part of the style, here it actually feels like the characters have to obey the rules of gravity. When a character jumps high in the air, it's not just something they can do, it takes a lot of strength. It even leads to this cool moment of Mario shooting his fireball down to hit Bowser as he falls. Characters aren't just being blasted across the screen in this fight. There's careful attention to choreography and how Bowser uses his arsenal. Just like Wario, he has his own fighting style. His shell, fire blast, and incredible weight. These fighting styles make each encounter feel unique from each other. The effects animation is gorgeous. Just like the sound design, almost every action is punctuated by a small effect animation. Whether it's a dust cloud or a mark on the ground, you feel every interaction, big or small. Finally, we'll move on to the character work. Everything I said about how the characters are shown through the structure is still true. You see Bowser's massive presence, underhanded tactics, clear grudges and motivations. We see how brave, kind, and selfless Mario is and what he cares about. Luigi's cowardice but concern for his brother. In fact, the characterization is even better this time. Bowser tries to attack Luigi earlier in the fight because he doesn't play fair, but Mario protects him to show how much he cares. Then when Mario is down, Luigi stands up to him in spite of his fear. I love this moment. It highlights how even though Luigi is scared, his love for Mario will always overpower his fear, properly setting him up for his arc to become more courageous. And the moment when Sonic and Shadow drop isn't just convenience anymore, it's the narrative rewarding Luigi for being selfless. He held Bowser in that position long enough to get struck in the head, which is incredibly goofy and matches the tone of his character. Even Shadow gets better characterization. Instead of both Sonic and Shadow saving Peach, it's just Sonic. Shadow cares about collecting the Chaos Emeralds and getting revenge more than anything else. But Sonic is still willing to help others because he doesn't let his anger blind him. And as I said before, having Sonic and Shadow save Mario once incidentally and once intentionally instills a natural feeling of trust in them. The episode ends in our hero's victory, and that's all I wanted to cover for this episode. In honesty, there are just too many little things I want to point out about this reboot. Everything is so much better than what came before. The staging, directing, sound design, character work, lighting, and dear God, the animation. It is genuinely breathtaking. We've already gotten 2 episodes of this reboot, both combining to be over an hour long. I can't imagine the massive undertaking that this reboot has been. But the heart of what I'm trying to express was being a fan back in 2009, having to say goodbye to something that was so meaningful to you. And the simple fact that for the first time in over 6 years, I was actually excited for a new episode of Super Mario Bros. Z. That feeling is the only thing I truthfully do not know how to put into words. I want to give a huge thank you to my Ko-fi supporters who make these videos possible. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I worked very hard in it. I know it took a while, but I'll eventually get to episode 2, and thank you so much for watching.